Hello and welcome to the 160th second photography podcast. In my episode last week, I looked at the new Canon EOS R5 and R6. Cracking cameras, can't wait for them to come out, although, as I said, I probably wouldn't be buying them if I were. Probably the R6 takes my fancy over the R5. At the end of the episode last time, I thought about the Canon EOS mirrorless line because there was a lot of hype around the EOS R, the original, not so much around the RP. The R5 and the R6 are hugely hyped. Canon's confirmed the Canon 5D series will be no more. It won't go past the Mark IV. That tells me they're solely in the mirrorless category now. And they do make good mirrorless cameras, but let's not forget that they have had mirrorless cameras since, I think, 2012, 2013. And that's what we're going to talk about in today's episode. We're going to be talking about the Canon EOS M line, the original M line. So I've had two of these cameras, believe it or not. The EOS M stood for EOS mirrorless. And first of all, we had the Canon EOS M, and it was sort of very similar to the 650D. It was an APS-C model, but it was smaller. It was very small, and the lenses on it were smaller still. So I'd say the lenses were smaller than Micro Four Thirds lenses, but they were still APS-C capable. Of course, you can't use them with Micro Four Thirds, but you understand what I mean. And you could also get an adapter for that camera to use your standard EF lenses. So when the EOS M came out, the autofocus was a bit slow compared to the Canon 650D, and it didn't do that well. And because it didn't do that well, I went and got it. And that sounds a strange thing to say, but it was a very capable camera, and it was a very pocketable camera, essentially. It wasn't much bigger than a Sony RX100, but it was an APS-C camera that could take your Canon lenses. In those days, shoot very good quality HD. So it was a good camera, but it came out at around £500 or £600. And I think I bought mine new for under £200. It was a bit of a flop, and I love the fact it was a flop because it came with a really good kit lens. The kit lens was incredibly well built. All the lenses for the EOS M series are very well built. They're very, very good lenses, and they don't weigh much at all. So we had this tremendously good kit lens that it came with, so much better than the kit lens you get on your DSLRs for Canon, and this really good kit lens. And the best lens I think they did for it was the Canon 22mm pancake lens, which again, because the system was a bit of a flop when it came out, I bought that for under £99. I bought that for a steal. So I got the EOS M for not much money with the kit lens, and I got the 22mm pancake, and it was my carry-around camera at that time. It was much better than my 550D, and I think at some point Magic Lantern even came out for it. But I went and sold that camera because for whatever reason I wasn't using it and the autofocus was slow. So I was using it more for photography, but the autofocus was slow. So I think I sold it when I got my Canon 5D full frame camera, second-hand one, my Mark I 5D full frame camera. So other ones that have come out, there's been a Canon M2, an M3, an M10, an M5, an M6, an M6 Mark II, an M50, an M100, and an M200. So I think the M200 is the latest one. They're small cameras, much smaller than a DSLR. The lenses are smaller. You might think, well, this is fantastic. What's the drawback? Well, the drawback is Canon hasn't produced loads of lenses for them. There's your standard lenses. There's a kit lens. There's a zoom lens. There's a wide angle prime. They are incredibly good lenses, but there aren't many. You're better off with the EF lenses because there's more of them. In fact, there's probably more RF lenses than there are EF M lenses. So that's what the lenses are called. They're called EF M lenses. And of course, you can use a converter, as I've said. So the weakness is in the lenses. Clearly, Canon have launched an awful lot of EOS M cameras, but they haven't put out the lenses so much. Sigma, I think, do some third-party lenses for them, but again, I think it's only Sigma who do third-party lenses. Because it's a mirrorless system, you can adapt other lenses because you've got a short flange distance, so I'm sure you can get adapters and put other lenses on, but you're going to lose your autofocus most likely. So the EOS M50 is quite a popular camera because that has medium megapixels. I think it's about 20 megapixels. It shoots HD, but it shoots 4K as well, and it has the dual pixel autofocus, and it has a flip out touchscreen, so it's very good as a vlogging camera, and lots of YouTubers will use that camera as a vlogging camera because it's lightweight and it's capable. Now I think it has quite a big crop in 4K, and I think you lose the dual pixel autofocus in 4K, but I think at the time maybe it was a good choice, and at the moment I think you can probably get it for £500 or £600. We've got differentiation within this series of cameras. The M5, the M6 and the M50 are more sort of enthusiast or serious cameras made for serious, professional photographers, and the other ones are sort of more for your hobbyists or introduction cameras like APS-C Canon DSLRs. So like I said, I had the original EOS M and I thought it was good, but I did sell it. I had the pancake lens, the 22mm, bought it really cheap, sold it, and I think I might have looked at buying it again, but it shot up in price, so I didn't buy it again. And like I said, that kit lens is the best kit lens I've ever had. I also got the EOS M10. Now that had a flip screen, that had better autofocus, that had slightly higher megapixels, but again, it was a very cheap camera. It didn't cost very much, and again, I used it and I sold it later. And again, that was slightly pulled back from the original EOS M. I've talked about differentiation within the camera lines. The EOS M had a mic input and it had a flash hot shoe. I don't think the M10 had a mic input, and I don't think it had a hot shoe, and I think it had less sort of tactile controls. The question is, now that the EOS R line is out and it's fully established, what is going to happen to the EOS M line? I know I've said Canon have announced an EOS M50 Mark II, but what's the future beyond that for the M line? Is it worth buying an EOS M? Well, if you want a small and lightweight camera, then of course there's plenty out there, but you are limited because you want something small. So you're either going to get an EOS M, a traditional Canon DSLR that's an APS-C that's a bit smaller, or a micro four thirds camera, or you're going to get a compact. So if we look at those and think about them, you might question whether there's a future for Canon DSLRs, particularly the APS-C ones. Is there a future for them? Probably. They're all going to get replaced at some point by Canon's mirrorless. You've got an awful lot of lenses that you can get hold of very cheaply for that line of camera, which is really good. You've got very high quality lenses that you can get. You've got Yongnuo lenses that are made for them, so you've got a very good lens availability. Micro four thirds, again, you've got a very good lens availability, not as good as Canon. I don't think the lenses are as good. I don't think the lenses are as cheap. And I don't think you've got as much third-party support. And then I suppose last of all, you've got your EOS M, where the lenses are good, but you don't have a great deal of choice. And then you've got your compacts. Now, all of these really seem like dying markets. Maybe micro four thirds isn't such a dying market, but some people would say micro four thirds are dead. Some people wouldn't. So should you get one? Well, it depends what you are going to do. If you're going to go on to a different camera and you bought a Canon EOS M, you might get some Canon EF lenses and you'll be able to use those on your new camera if you went and got an EOS R. Don't forget the EOS R cameras. You can get the RP, which is a bit smaller. It's full frame, but it's going to be considerably lighter than a DSLR. Also, while I've been thinking about it, the micro four thirds cameras can be quite expensive. So really it comes down to size and expense. And probably in terms of size and expense, the cheapest is going to be the Canon EOS M line, particularly with Canon's new line coming out. It might get even cheaper still, and those lenses may get even cheaper still. So potentially it's a good purchase if you want a small, lightweight, interchangeable lens camera at a lower price. Maybe the EOS M line is a good one for that. Let me know what you think though. Would you like to get a Canon EOS M? Do you have one? Or would you just go full frame and get the EOS R? Because don't forget, the EOS R, the original, and the RP will probably drop in price when the newer cameras come out. I'd love to know your thoughts, and have a great week. Thank you. Goodbye.